Welcome to the Holistic Career Change Podcast. Spoiler alert, we don't discuss conventional, linear, boring career change here. This is the place where we talk about finding an aligned career path that feels like an extension of who you are, where you get paid for being yourself. Forget personality quizzes, soul-crushing scrolling on job sites, and breaking your brain trying to find your why. Join me and many other career changers who've changed their career holistically by first defining who they are at their core and then using this blueprint to design a fulfilling career or business. We use the mind-body-soul approach, and we take into consideration the complexity and multidimensionality of all that you are and want to represent in the world. This is where purpose-led careers are born and built. I'm your host, Vilma. Let's go. Hello, friends and lovers. How are you? Happy fall. The doom and gloom season has arrived. And I love it. I love it. You know, I love the cold weather. Having said that, if you're listening to this in real time, I actually just gotten back from sunny Morocco and I loved it. And I thought what I'm going to do is have a little catch-up episode with you and share a little more about what's happening behind the scenes, in my business, in my own evolution, if you will. And I hope that is going to inspire you and perhaps validate some of the experiences that you've been having as well. Speaking of travel, by the way, this is going to be a complete detour. I'm going off tangent, but I've shared on my Instagram recently that I have become very intentional when it comes to choosing my travel locations. And as someone who is HSP, meaning highly sensitive to people and environments, I used to quickly notice how certain countries that I would visit or certain cities that perhaps other people would completely rave about did absolutely nothing for me. Like nothing. And I'm so curious. Please let me know if you're someone like that too, where you visit certain countries and you're like, why is everyone so in love with this? Like, I feel nothing. I feel empty inside. So, for me, it's like Paris or, I don't know, like Spain, the whole country. Even though I go there a lot, Spain feels cold to me, like energetically, and I don't quite connect with the local customs, and I quite literally feel like an alien when I'm there. I don't feel happy, basically. I just, like, neutral usually. And I feel like I should just not be there. Like, this country just doesn't do much for me. And that's, by the way, not taking away from how amazing and beautiful and colorful this country is. I'm talking about my personal relationship with it. So, since I noticed this stark difference in my experiences when I travel, I got really interested in astrocartography, which, to put it simply, if you don't know yet, is part of astrology, right? Is a branch of astrology where you are aligning your birth chart with a map of the world, where basically each line corresponds to a planet and its position in the sky when you were born. And each of that planetary line offers its own unique energy that you would experience when you're near that line geographically. So out of curiosity, I checked Spain for myself. And again, we will have completely different planetary lines for each of us, right? So this could be a completely different experience. But when I check Spain, the only thing that I have going there is a Pluto line. And if you're familiar just a little bit with astrology, you know that Pluto is a planet of death and rebirth and transformation and really all about the shadow topics. So no wonder I used to feel heavy in there. Like it would just be darker for me when I would be there. So again, this is me going way off tangent, but I wanted to share is that I started traveling, and I started using traveling intentionally as medicine for myself and as medicine for my growth, meaning I now choose locations that have certain planetary lines and the energy that I feel like I crave at that point in time. So even though I'm not big on hot weather. I'm a northerner, but Morocco was exactly what I needed because it has a Mars line. As an Aries sun, I love Mars. I feel empowered in Mars. I feel sunny when I'm next to my Mars line. And it's all about fire and action taking and inspiration. And it's also had my Juno line, which is Juno's asteroid of relationships and partnerships. So not only did this trip re-energize me with a Mars line, but also I met a few people that I might even collab with in my business or hire for my business. So it really was such a beautiful healing experience. So if you haven't tried it, I highly recommend astrocartography and choosing travel destinations that perhaps at times seem super random to others, but it will be exactly what your soul desires. And if you're sensitive, trust, you will be able to tell such a difference. It's like when you travel to your lines, especially if they're good lines, like Moon line will make you feel at home, Venus will make you enjoy the Venusian pleasures. It's like the atmosphere is charged differently. When I was flying back from Morocco, I was sitting next to a Moroccan man, a local man, and he asked me how he enjoyed his country. And if you've been to Morocco, if you are Moroccan, shout out. These are such kind, beautiful, proud people. And I just briefly responded to him. I was still processing and integrating because there's so much that happened. He paused and smiled and said, I really don't know you. Like, I literally just met you, but you sparkle. There's something about you. Like, you look charged. Isn't it wild? So it really is the energy of the different countries. And yeah, I'm not someone who gets that comment a lot, especially when I'm at home. Anyway, what I wanted to chat with you about today is reinvention, which is weaved into the very fabric of an aligned life and an aligned career. And I feel like sometimes it's a little misunderstood. It's going to be a short episode. I know I always say that. It's going to be a short episode, okay? Because I don't necessarily want to teach or give you a strategy. It's more maybe expand your perspective and reiterate something that all of you already know within. So here's what I mean. If you look around you, nothing in our natural life is ever stagnant. There's always movement. Sometimes it's subtle, when we blink it and we miss it, and sometimes it's big shift and big movement, but there's always movement. And say seasonal change, probably you could consider that as the biggest, the most obvious change in nature that we can visibly see. Even if we look at matter, any matter, it's not solid. We know from the kinetic molecular theory that atom and molecules are always in motion. That's how the heat, that's how the energy is created. Same with energy realms. If we look at like different dimensions, there's always movement and energy is always transforming and shifting. Which means that the natural, the healthiest way to coexist in this ecosystem, mind, body, soul, is movement and continuous reinvention and continuous surrendering to the death and rebirth cycles. Okay, and again, I talk about death and rebirth quite a lot. Think about it. How often do we do this reinvention and surrendering in a career context? I mean, now, thankfully, there's a lot of change and a lot of multi-passionate people who are coming into the scene and they're redefining it and they're normalizing the shifts and they're normalizing transitions. But in a traditional sense, we are still programmed to perceive career stability as something to aspire to, right? Going down the specialist route is the ultimate goal, or has been the ultimate goal for many generations that came before us. So you would choose a profession, you'd get a job, you climb that ladder, you earn the stripes, you retire, you die. That was the blueprint. And this is what, again, many of our grandparents and even our parents have done. And some of you may say that they've done it well and they are perfectly okay with that. And they might have been, because these generations didn't have or didn't always have the luxury that many of you and I have today, which is building an authentic life where we can live in and with our purpose and do it unapologetically and earn money while doing that. Right? They didn't have the privilege of even asking themselves, what would a job or a business that I would absolutely love look like for me? It wasn't a thing. It wasn't a topic of conversation. You get a job and you were grateful to have the job. And yet now it is a question, and it is a big pain point for so many of us. It's probably one of the biggest riddles we're trying to solve for ourselves in our lifetimes, especially if you're mission driven. And if you're listening to this podcast, I would assume you're one of those people who can't just have a job for the sake of having a job. So what I'm trying to say here is that if we commit to finding and building that aligned career, and especially if you're interested in building an aligned business, we will also automatically have to commit to continuous reinvention and rebirth within that aligned field. Because alignment, if we look at it through this holistic lens, it doesn't just mean alignment with your soul, alignment with your career blueprint and your career DNA, which is a journey and evolution in and of itself, but also alignment with the planet, alignment with a collective energy of change. So aligned careers often will be responding to both, to your inner wants and needs and alignment, to your inner blueprint, but also to the outer energies and what's happening in a collective as a whole, especially if you are or consider yourself a light worker who's here to serve others. Does that make sense? Let me know if it does, because that's something I don't hear a lot of people talk about, but also I don't really do extensive research. And I don't do that because I really want to make sure that I share my own downloads and I don't dilute my message by resharing content that perhaps has been shared before. But what happens, as you probably listen to many podcasts, you'll see many intuitives will share similar messages, because when you're open, attuned to what's happening, you will be getting access to similar messages, similar reminders for the people. So why do I talk about this, and why does this reinvention, the topic in reinvention, becomes a challenge at times? Well, because what often happens is, say you are currently in the middle of career change and you are so happy to commit to that first part of aligned work equation. So you are really eager to find something that aligns with your blueprint and with the original mission intended by your soul. However, we may also, once we find it and start building it and maybe even start seeing success with it, often we get really tense and frustrated when we realize that ultimate alignment is a little bit of a moving target. Because it's a continuous invitation to step into a new, more aligned, more authentic, more evolved version of ourselves, which means also that in order to do that, to step into a new version, we will also be asked to reimagine our aligned businesses and careers. However, big caveat before you freak out. I don't mean that you will be forever changing your careers and moving through all of these completely different industries and becoming serial career changers. I don't mean that. What I mean is that you will be asked to continue to refine and realign, and you will be getting clearer and clearer on your truth and your authenticity, and that process of refinement will never stop. And if and when we try to avoid it, we will almost be cut off of life force energy, and we will notice that really quickly, and life, the universe, whatever will force us to accept it. If not, again, it will become really, really hard for us to exist in that energy. And again, we don't always like it because it does not always feel secure and stable. Many of us want to find an aligned career. That's what a lot of people who come to chat with me on consultation calls, they tell me, I just want to know what it is and I just want to focus on that. It's great. So many of us want to find a aligned career, and then we expect to go down the old school specialist route. I find it, I hone in, I become a pro, my life is sorted. I was one of them. I swear to God, that's what I thought how it works. But you can't mix the old paradigm approach of that specialist route with the energy of the new paradigm and the new world that we're calling in. They just don't mix. When we sign up for alignment, we sign up for reinvention too. And the more we resist it, the harder it will become to move forward in that towards the aligned direction. It's like, how do I explain this? It's like, say when we're misaligned in our lives, maybe you're currently there, maybe it's past versions of ourselves. It's really then when we're sitting in misalignment, it's really easy to do a lot of misaligned things in our life, not necessarily just in our careers. Meaning, say even myself back, all the way back when I was in corporate, like I hated my job. My diet was really shit because I didn't really care because I was always low vibe. I was always tired. So I was craving fatty, sugary, salty food. So my diet was completely misaligned off. I wasn't as active as I should have been, or I would start like workout routines or sign up for gym, never go there because I was just tired all the time. So my health was not optimum at all. I probably had more misaligned friendships than I care to admit. Because misalignment likes company, right? Like attracts like. So low frequency attracts low frequency in all areas of our lives. So it's easy to live in misalignment where everything is misaligned. We don't even notice that it's misaligned. That's just our reality. Now, when we start moving towards alignment and become really intentional about pretty much every single decision in every single area of our lives, we will start to feel alive. We will start to feel flow. We will start to attract magic and synchronicities, and our frequency will start changing. Then, when we're in that space, when we would randomly maybe encounter something that is misaligned, say we bump into a new friend who just does not respect your boundaries, something that perhaps our past self would have completely tolerated when she was misaligned. But now, when we are in a different frequency and we bump into that energy, we almost have sometimes, like I jokingly say, we almost have an allergic reaction to it. It's like our whole system has such a strong response now to something that is misaligned in our lives and something that is misaligned in other people's lives, to any misalignment at all. And notice that if you are there where you're like in your aligned career or business, when you hear other people talk misalignment, you have a very strong response. You're like, wow, why are you still here? Like, that feels awful. That like so heavy. I almost can't listen to this, right? So again, when we start moving towards alignment, we probably naturally, even sometimes without trying, everything will change. Like we'll start craving different foods. We'll probably want to move more. We become just like naturally healthier because misaligned things have lost their attraction for us, and we're craving for higher frequency everything: foods, people, spaces, so on and so forth. So that means that when it's time to reinvent and when it's time to pivot in your alignment journey, you will very strongly feel it in your bones. It's like that which perhaps was a dream come true 12 months ago, now will start to slightly feel off. And you will now need to embrace and embody this new version of aligned self. And again, just to reiterate, when I say embody this new version or when I say pivot, I don't mean that you will go through a 180 career change again. Your career direction, aligned career direction, will probably remain the same. But what will be shifting or what you'll be asked to change is how you show up or what mediums you use, or maybe how you look. Like maybe your looks, the way that you present yourself has become misaligned. Or maybe the tools that you use need to shift a little bit, right? So for example, I see that so much with my practice. When I first started in career coaching, and then I kind of niched down to career change coaching and career alignment, which was what I was most passionate about. I really started with a very conventional approaches and conventional strategies. I used more traditional tools, more traditional coaching tools when it comes to career development. I followed someone else's methodology when I started just because, well, I got trained in it. So I had no other awareness and understanding on how else to do this work apart from how I was trained, right? So in order to break the rules, we need to learn the rules. And so at first I followed the rules. And very quickly, I started to feel like at times something was off, or the energy would leave sometimes client sessions for me. It's like suddenly it zapped. And I'd be like, what's happening? My brain was freaking out because at first I didn't understand what and why I was feeling off. I knew that this work, this general work, was very aligned with my being. But what I didn't understand is that approach that I had initially learned, that initially served me when I was very new, was becoming to limit my abilities as a facilitator, as a coach, as a guide for people. So when I finally stopped listening to my panicky brain shouting at me like, what does this mean? What's the plan? Does it mean that you can't be a career coach anymore, right? Like when I turned the volume down on that like primal, panicky, gremlin-y brain, I started hearing and understanding the guidance more of where I was going. I started understanding the process of reinvention and surrender to it more, in order to have access to the creative shifts. And again, it's not always easy because our ego mind often hates this part. Ego mind likes structure and clarity and safety and security. And it's almost like the minute that you settle, the minute you feel comfortable in this new business, in this new area, you get the soul notification like, ding, time to up level, time to bring in more truth. Now you're ready to bring in more truth. And yes, it's a love and hate relationship for many of us. So I feel that all the time, even when I'm running these career change groups, like each group has a little bit of a different energy because I show up in a different energy as well. One is not worse than the other cohort, for instance, because the energy that I exude at that point in time is the exact energy that the participants of the group need. Otherwise, they wouldn't be a match for the container. However, every single time when I look through the content, say that I have filmed, there is a big understanding of how I need to now shift, like I'm being called in to invite even more spirituality, even more energy work into this, because that's the paradigm that I feel called to usher in or help usher in for the world. And that doesn't mean that I only work with light workers, right? Or it only has to be super woo-woo and spiritual. What I mean is like, as I evolve and my gifts evolve and open up, I feel called to share more and more of that because that's what feels good. That's where alignment is for this current version of myself. So again, if you're starting to feel that, if you're like settled and you're like, okay, I feel like I'm being called to again pivot, or just keep this for the future reference. When you start to feel that, don't throw the baby with the bathwater and don't discard the whole career path. Really get quiet and discern where is the actual misalignment. And chances are you're simply invited to find your authentic voice, get louder, find your authentic take, your way of approaching this work. You're here to reinvent and you're here to redefine the status quo. And well, there's no manual for that. I'm sorry to break it to you. It's you trusting your gut, you trusting your intuition, you trusting your body and your creative sparks, and then taking action on that, sometimes having no idea how it's going to pan out or what it's going to look like. That's you saying yes to this movement and reinvention that is embedded in our very DNA. And ironically, the quicker that you surrender to this reinvention game, the more productive you become, the more impactful your work will be, and the more abundance you will attract. Financially, emotionally, and energetically. So my wish for you, sincere invitation, is to embrace the reinventing. and have fun with it, because it's also wild sometimes what happens when we simply say, you know what? Fuck it. I'm going to do that. Have an amazing week. Thank you for spending time with me today. If you enjoy this content, please make sure you subscribe to this podcast and leave a quick review to help us share the message of aligned work with the world. And if you'd like to learn more about how to find and transition into your very own purpose-led career or business that feels like getting paid for being yourself, make sure you check out the episode notes below. Have a wonderful week.